Indian Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, Honorable Minister of State for Finance, Shri Pankaj Chaudhary, Honorable Minister of State for Finance, Dr. Bhagwat Kishanrao Karad, respected dignitaries on the dais, esteemed members of the trade, senior officers, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a momentous day today as the city of Bhubaneswar hosts the post-budget interaction of the Honorable Union Minister of Finance with Trade and Industry. It is even more memorable as the budget 22-23 is the first budget to be presented in Amrit Kal. Madam, for today's interaction, we have in the audience representatives of trade, startups, MSMEs, representatives of trade associations, entrepreneurs, amongst others. Madam, with your permission, we now start the question-answer session. I shall read out the name of the person who can then ask the question or make any observation. I request the speaker to kindly keep the questions or the comments brief and to the point and on the announcements made in the budget. I also request the speaker to avoid any kind of a repetition of questions. I call upon the first speaker, Shri Debashish Mohanty, Senior Manager, Tata Steel Special Economic Zone Limited.
Respected Honorable Union Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs and esteemed dignitaries on and off the dais, a very good morning to all of you. I represent Tata Steel Special Economic Zone. We are developing Gopalpur Industrial Park, one of the first multi-product special economic zone and industrial park in the state of Odisha. First of all, we would like to congratulate you and your team for presenting the first true green budget in this edition, giving a fair share of budget to the much needed industrial and economic transition. Ma'am, from a developer perspective, we are seeing at ground level huge amount of excitement and investment intent in the green hydrogen and the green sector space. However, we do also see that these units require enormous amount of power and water apart from the specialized electrolyzer production. Now, these power and water requirement needs investments which are capital heavy in nature. Ma'am, we believe that better value creation can be created through sharing of this common infrastructure facility, and that is only possible when these green hydrogen players come at some select green hubs. Ma'am, my question is, do Government of India have plans to provide an incentive mechanism such that park developers such as us can create such green hubs which can be a plug-and-play model for this green hydrogen manufacturers, ensure resilience of the supply chain, and at last reduce the cost of production of hydrogen so that it finds its usability in different hard-to-abate sectors. Thank you, ma'am.
There is a green hydrogen mission which has been approved. If I get your drift, you are saying this is not covered in that. Is that your point? Then send us some suggestions, and particularly please send them to the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, who are in charge of the green hydrogen mission, and it can be examined. But of course, you do understand that there is a limit to how much industrial subsidy the government can afford. So it will have to be seen in that balance. But there is the green hydrogen mission. If you think this is an addition to that, you may send your suggestions to us as well as to Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. But I'm not able to give a specific reply to you now.
The next speaker, Shri A.K. Sabath, representing the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India.
हेलो, नमस्कार मैडम, जय जगन्नाथ। 50 साल हो गया मैं बजट एनालाइज करता हूं, और ये 50 साल में दिस बजट इज वन ऑफ द बेस्ट बजट्स फॉर द ग्रोथ ऑफ द नेशन एंड फॉर द फ्यूचर ग्रोथ ऑफ द नेशन. The message is given clearly in this budget. and we will remain as the winning horse. दूसरा जितना कंट्री है हमारे पीछे रहेंगे, हम 7% के ऊपर ही हमारा ग्रोथ रहेगा ये बजट के हिसाब से। इसके बाद मैडम हमारा 2-3 पॉइंट्स है, so that I would like to just say to consider before the passing of the budget. मैडम 5 लाख का एग्जम्पशन दिए हैं, तो अगर 5 लाख के अंदर आपका इनकम रहेगा, ये साल आप बढ़ाए हैं 7 लाख रुपया अंडर द न्यू टैक्स रेजिम। नाउ 7 लाख 100 रुपया हो जाएगा या 7 लाख 1,000 रुपया हो जाएगा, तो कोई मार्जिनल रिलीफ नहीं है। ऑल ऑफ ए सडन एक आदमी को 25,000 रुपया टैक्स देना पड़ेगा 7 लाख के ऊपर। आई विल रिक्वेस्ट योर टीम to consider whether marginal relief concept can be introduced so that people calculation करते करते 1,000-2,000 रुपया बढ़ सकता है, and then they will be really getting a punishment of not getting 87A rebate. This is madam my first point. Second point is senior citizen को मैडम अच्छा किए हैं, क्योंकि 15 लाख का 30 लाख किए, 4.5 लाख का 9 लाख किए हैं और 9 लाख का 15 लाख किए हैं फॉर द सेविंग स्कीम, वन ऑफ द बेस्ट दैट हैज बीन अनाउंस्ड इन द लास्ट सो मेनी ईयर्स। पर सुपर सीनियर सिटीजन 80 साल वाला जो है मैडम, उनका जो फिगर है 5 लाख में रह गया है सिंस 2012 व्हेन प्रणब मुखर्जी जी 60 को 50,000 दिए थे और 80 को 5 लाख कर दिए थे, एंड उसके बाद तो प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ इंडिया बन गए, क्योंकि सुपर सीनियर सिटीजन का बड़ा आशीर्वाद रह गया उनके ऊपर। हम चाहते हैं ये सुपर सीनियर सिटीजन को 5 लाख का फिगर जो कि 11 साल हो गया रह गया है, थोड़ा सा कुछ दीजिए मैडम। उनके पास पैसा नहीं रहता है तो गो फॉर 15 लाख से 30 लाख, 20 साल में उनका पैसा जनरली खत्म हो जाता है। तो इसीलिए हम चाहते हैं ये जो ऑल्टरनेटिव टैक्स मैकेनिज्म हमारा है उसमें क्या है मैडम, 3 लाख ही बेसिक एग्जम्पशन है सबको। इट मीन्स मैं तो सीनियर सिटीजन हूं, मुझे तो 3 लाख पे मैं आ गया हूं वो स्कीम ये स्कीम में, बट जिसको 80 हो गया तो वो तो 5 लाख से उसका 3 लाख हो गया, तो 2 लाख उधर माइनस हो जाता है मैडम। उसके बारे में थोड़ा सा सोचिए कि उनको कुछ नहीं मिला, कुछ दें क्या, वो आशीर्वाद मिल जाएगा मोदी गवर्नमेंट को। फिर तीसरा पॉइंट है मैडम, व्हाट एन अनाउंसमेंट, आई विल टेल यू, आई सैल्यूट यू फॉर दैट। 2002 में लीव एनकैशमेंट आपको 3 लाख रुपया मिलता था, 20 साल तक इसको रिवीजन नहीं किया था, आपने 3 लाख को 25 लाख किया। नो फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर हैज डन दिस एवर ऑन एनी ऑफ दिस फैसिलिटी। My salute to you and your team. पर मैडम ये 2002 को जब आप कंसिडर किए हैं तो 1997 को थोड़ा सा कंसिडर कीजिए मैडम। बच्चा लोग 2 बच्चा लोग पाठ पढ़ेगा तो ट्यूशन फीस 100 रुपया तक है, किधर पढ़ेगा मैडम 100 रुपया में? हॉस्टल में रहेगा तो 300 रुपया है, 300 रुपया में कौन सा बच्चा कौन सा हॉस्टल में रहेगा? 2002 को अगर 8 गुना कर दिया है, इधर भी थोड़ा सा सोचिए मैडम, मिडिल क्लास को बहुत हेल्प मिलेगा, मिडिल क्लास रो रहे हैं। और मैडम मेरा तीसरा जो क्वेश्चन है, ये तो हमारा मिडिल क्लास के लिए बोल दिया हूं, ये जो इन्फ्लेशन इंडेक्स आप देते हैं that has been fixed as of 1/4/2001, 81 से उसको 2001 किए। अभी भी सब रजिस्टर ऑफिस में अगर 2001 का फिगर मांगेंगे नहीं मिलता है, और 21 साल हो गया वो 1/4/2001 बेच रहा है, 100 का 331 होता है इन्फ्लेशन इंडेक्स। 2001 को आप 1/4 कर दीजिए, मीन्स हमारा मोदी गवर्नमेंट जब आया वो 14 तक उसको लाकर वो इन्फ्लेशन इंडेक्स को कीजिए। इसमें बहुत काला धन का ट्रांजैक्शन होता है, और उसको आप थोड़ा सा दे सकते हैं कि भाई रजिस्ट्रेशन आप तो 1/4/14 का होगा और उसका इन्फ्लेशन हम आपको क्रेडिट दे दिया। ये जरा मैडम अगर होगा तो we'll be all grateful. A budget is one of the best budgets. Again, I'm repeating. ये थोड़ा सा icing on the cake जैसा होता है. तो ये तीन को अगर कंसिडर करके बजट जब फाइनेंस एक्ट होता है, तो we will be all ever grateful to you. Thank you, ma'am.
We move on to the next question.
मैडम, इसको जो मैं बनाया हूँ, अगर आप बोलेंगे, मैं लिखकर आपको या जिसको भी भेजना बोलेंगे, उसको हमारा पूरा नोट बनाकर भेज देगा, क्योंकि एक महीना है बिल पास होने के लिए. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
दे दीजिए.
I now request the next speaker, Srimati Nimishika Natarajan, Secretary, Odisha Chapter, World Trade Center.
Secretary of what?
World Trade Center.
World Trade Center.
Respected Madam and dignitaries on the dais, a privilege to be interacting with you. Namaskar to one and all. I represent World Trade Center Bhubaneswar, which is a global platform for providing international trade promotion opportunities and international trade connects. Respected ma'am, my question is, the year 2023 has been declared as the International Year of Millets by the United Nations. And we welcome your contribution in the form of the Center of Excellence on Research for Millets being announced through the Shri Anna Yojana. India is definitely going to be the next hub for export as well as production of millets is concerned. Odisha has high potential in millets, and there is definitely a dichotomy in the current tax regime considering the GST applicable on millet products vis-a-vis your vision on Shri Anna. Most of the shopkeepers, they procure the millet-based products from the FPOs or the SHGs, so to say, and they package and brand it under their name. So recently the government has started taxing the pre-packed and the pre-processed millet products. This is definitely detrimental for the millet consumers, as well as it stands as a roadblock for the promotion of the Shri Anna Yojana. How would you like to address this dichotomy?
First of all, I don't think we did a pre-packed millet taxation. Any pre-packed product per the GST measurements does have a tax on it. So it was not aimed at millet per se.
It's not the grains, it's the processed millets, ma'am, millet-based products.
Every value addition gets taxed, ma'am.
No, it's not specific to millets, isn't it? It's not, nothing was done specific to millets by the GST Council. Just a factual point.
I request the next speaker, Srimanta Panda, General Manager, National Aluminium Company Limited.
Good morning, Honorable FM and other dignitaries seated on the dais and all esteemed seniors here. I represent Central PSC, so obviously I represent the general salary middle class people also. Though this, I compliment you for presenting this budget in succession, which will take India to the path of 5 trillion economy, there is no doubt. But the concerns of salary class are there. In fact, this question, this suggestion which I am going to make doesn't pertain to this budget, but we are expecting some relief. This was introduced in 2021 budget. In section 10, clause 12, there was a provision introduced where interest income or certain threshold limit on employees' contribution was sought to be taxed. My humble submission is, the contribution to Provident Fund is a statutory thing for employees. It is arising out of the statutory provision in the EPFO Act and Miscellaneous Provision Act. The basic, the DA, everything is decided by the Government of India, the Cabinet decision, Presidential Directive, etc. The DA, is also decided by the Ministry of Finance, Department of Expenditure. The percentage of contribution is also decided by provision of the Act, Statutory Act. The rate of interest is also decided by Labour Ministry and EPFO. Now, when everything is decided by Government of India, it is a compulsory social security measure imposed on us, how the interest will be taxed on us. And moreover, there is a differentiation between two threshold limit there, 2.5 lakh and 5 lakh. And my humble submission is, madam, that defeats and contrary to the first canons of taxation, that is the equality or equity. So my humble submission, this disparity, this differentiation should be addressed, and when something is compulsory, employee doesn't have any role, this should be addressed.
Let me respond to this. First of all, the statutory requirement of EPFO is only up to 15,000 rupees. There is no compulsion to make a higher subscription to EPFO beyond that. It is a voluntary subscription by the subscriber beyond the statutory sum of 15,000 rupees. So it is not correct to say that employers are required to contribute and employees are required to contribute beyond that. That's a voluntary contribution, number one. Number two, up to 2.5 lakhs of rupees, the distinction that you are making, in the case of EPFO employees, there is an employer contribution of 12% and there is an employee contribution, and the employer's contribution is a matching contribution. In the case of the government provident fund, there is no government contribution at all. So the total amount is different because there is no employer contribution. That is the logic for that differential, and it is not correct to say that the statute requires an employee to contribute 12% of his income. It is not required beyond 15,000 rupees.
Sir, my submission is matching contribution by employer and employee. And nothing, this decision
No,
are
the
not...
matching is only if the employee chooses to subscribe. There is no compulsion on the employee to subscribe beyond the limit of 15,000. That's a voluntary contribution. If the employee contributes, the employer is supposed to contribute. But it is an election which is being made by the employee, and the figure of 2.5 lakhs will cover people with salaries up to 20 lakh rupees. 12% is less than that. Therefore, this is not a sum which affects the intention here is, let me tell you, there are people whose EPFO balances run to above 1,000 crores who get 8% tax-free income. We cannot run this country if people with 1,000 crores getting 8% guaranteed, government guaranteed interest pay no tax on that. It is not a feasible system of taxation. If we continue like that, the tax rates on those who are lower down will continue to be more than they should be. So this is a measure to cap it so that those who are actually salaried middle-class employees get the benefit. But say managing directors of multinational companies whose salaries run to 20, 30 crores and make 12% voluntary contribution and get 12% matching contribution from their employer, get that into their EPF account and then get complete tax-free benefits, 8% interest, and keep it even after retirement by joining another company. It's a huge tax loophole. This tax loophole needs to be closed in the interest of all the persons who are not in that super rich category. Therefore, the loophole has been closed. I'm just clarifying.
Sir, again, anyway, I should not prolong it, but there is an angle to it. We will submit you maybe with permission of here in a written here, because the structure, the flexibility of deciding a basic pay or whatever remuneration getting in private sector is not available in neither central government nor central PSUs in many cases.
Sorry?
One more conceptual question I had considered. Now, sir, what is a dearness allowance? It is a compensation being paid for erosion in the value of money. So a salary which was decided by government or anybody, agency, then the dearness allowance is to only compensate for the erosion in the value which is arising out of inflation and price rise in the economy. Now, having taxed the salary itself, the dearness allowance which is only to compensate for the erosion in value, should it be taxed?
Yes, it should be taxed. A businessman also faces similar erosion.
Exactly.
People without dearness allowance also face similar erosion.
Exactly.
Therefore, no, is it a question or would you like an answer? If not, I'll keep quiet.
Okay,
I can
sir.
listen to you. You can continue, please.
Sorry, sir, you continue.
I'll be interested to hear your views, but in case you want my answer, I'm trying to give it to you. No, a taxation there is no country in the world where inflation indexation is exempt completely from taxation. The base is changed periodically. That is why the base of taxation is changed from time to time. There are different sections of society. Some of them have dearness allowance. Some of them have no dearness allowance whatsoever. So privileging one class of people who get dearness allowance over another class of people who have to face without dearness allowance, this is a matter of policy choice. But dearness allowance is a legitimate item of taxation. It is an income and it necessarily has to be taxed. It is not correct to say that dearness allowance is not an income. It has always been taxed and it is being taxed. There is nothing new in this. I thought this discussion is on this year's budget. You are raising something that goes back to 1961. So this
dearness allowance, and everything that which goes with a formal sector employee. Equally, there is that world out there which has no such benefits. We have to balance it all a bit. So do send me your paper, please.
Sir, my humble submission to sir is a businessman.
I think now we should
Okay,
carry
thank you,
forward
thank
this
you,
discussion. I've invited you to give me a paper. I assure you I'll give my best time to it. We'll have some people in the ministry look into it at great detail. So do send it to me. Let me see others getting a chance.
Thank you, ma'am. I request all the speakers to kindly be brief in their questions in view of the constraints of time and to cover much ground. I invite the next speaker, Shri Tarun Agarwal, Chartered Accountant.
Respected Minister of Finance, ma'am, we just discussed about green hydrogen. The question is, we have already outlaid 20,000 crores for facilitate transitions of India economy to a low carbon intensity country. Presently, there is concessional rate of duty both on import side as well as GST side for installation of renewable power plant, solar and other green products. Would we can expect a similar declaration for exemption of custom duty for the project import and exemption from GST for setting up green hydrogen units? It will not only boost for investors but also create huge employment in our country.
I've noted the suggestion, but see the issue that the government faces when considering issues like this. There are people who manufacture these things in India. I mean, some of these things. So in any industry, I'm not specific to your particular industry. So when you make it import duty free, you are increasing the competitiveness of that Indian industry which is purchasing this item. But you are reducing the competitiveness of the person who wants to manufacture that item in India. You are making it more difficult to manufacture that item in India. So it is a trade-off which the government has to very carefully consider on its economic impact. It's not that because something is to be promoted, you make it duty-free for imports. If you do that, you are actually discouraging the domestic production of that input. So in the long run, we would like those inputs also to be produced in India so that a greater portion of the value chain comes here. So making something duty-free is something which has multiple consequences. They have to be carefully assessed before anything is done.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker, Shri Aditya Biswas, AGM Finance, Dalmia Cements Limited.
A very good morning to our Honorable Finance Minister of India and all the dignitaries present here. So ma'am, first of all, to start off, we from the industry, we acknowledge and appreciate a wonderful budget, and we definitely hope that under your august leadership, it will help us achieve the country's targets, our aspirations, and the targets that we richly deserve. So once again, thank you for that. So I am from the cement industry. I represent Dalmia Cement, which is one of the leading manufacturers of cement. And my question is very industry specific. So, this is a very common question that comes up very often is, we in cement, the recipients of our products are mostly the contractors and, civil construction people who normally do not get input tax credit. The next, the big item is that it is a growth and infrastructure product, and it is one of the main drivers of the Make in India concept. Now, the rate of cement from the beginning is in the 28% bracket, which in the current scenario is putting a heavy toll on the end users because the market, the rates of interest and the current inflation has made it very expensive to afford, housing in the current scenario. And on top of that, with no input tax credit available, the overall result is a very high cost of the end product of housing. So I just wanted to know your thoughts and your views on whether you are realistically considering a reduction of cement being a major infrastructure product from the current 28% rate to a lower rate. We hear a lot of media buzz on the GST Council meeting, which is scheduled tomorrow, possibly one of the agenda part. But we just want to know your views on whether we can realistically hope this time that the rate of cement is brought down and whether we can, be hopeful about that. So just wanted your views.
First of all, I like you carefully putting two words together. Nothing stops you from hoping. Right. Realistic hope, I don't know how to understand that. It's left to the GST Council to take a call on it. Yeah. You can hope. Whether it is realistic is not for me to comment on. It's a matter which the GST Council will take a call on, and every state finance minister sits there. I'm sure you equally saying all this to your finance minister in Odisha, if you're from Odisha. And cement is also a product which has got its own green negatives. So it's not as if it's a clear, green, clear signaled item. So one. Second, I fully appreciate the concern that you have for housing, costs of houses and so on. Since the last year, at least in areas where real estate comes and meets up with us, there's not been any inventory left. So if cement is adding to the cost of houses, houses should not be sold at all. So inventory is no longer there with the real estate. As regards 28, it's not just in my hands, it has to be decided by the council. Let's see how it goes.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am.
Just a couple of factual clarifications, just as a clarification, nothing to do with what the GST Council will or should do. First is you're mentioning input tax credit. I think you're aware that whether to take a lower rate without input tax credit or to pay a higher rate of GST with input tax credit is an option available to the construction sector. So people are voluntarily opting not to take credit because they have opted for a lower GST rate. So it's not correct to say that input credit is not allowed on cement in the real estate. It's a dual system. They can go for a simple 5% without input credit, or they can actually take it with an input credit. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Second, it's not also factually the case that rates have gone up since the introduction of GST. Pre-GST, there was both an excise duty and a sales tax, that is a VAT. So the calibrated rate of 28% approximately reflects the previous taxation structure, which did vary from state to state. But actually, just as a clarification, it has not gone up because of GST. This is the rate that has been prevailing in this country for a long time.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker, Srimanoj Agarwal, Advocate, Raukela Tax Bar Association. I request you to kindly keep your question brief.
Namaste and very good morning, Honorable Madam. Firstly, I would like to congratulate for this highly growth-oriented budget And the focus of the government is on capital expenditure, which will act as the fuel for the economy. The current growth rate of 7%, which is highest among all the economies in the world, it is truly remarkable, ma'am. And we should not forget that this all is happening in the background of 2 years of COVID and more than 1 year of ongoing war. Now, my area of domain is GST, so I will be restricting to that only. GST has been the game changer for the economy and is evident from the average collection of about 1.5 lakh crores every month this fiscal, ma'am. But you would appreciate, ma'am, that being a new law, which is equally applicable from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, there has been some glitches at the initial stage of implementation, and we are glad that we have majorly overcome those glitches. Now I would like to put forward some suggestions. I request you, ma'am, as the Union Finance Minister as well as the Chairman of the GST Council, ma'am, to kindly introduce one-time amnesty scheme, ma'am, for either waiver or reduction of late fees and penalties for procedural compliances, ma'am. So there are returns to be filed GSTR 1, 3B, 9, 9C, GSTR 4, GSTR 10, and taxpayers, especially MSME sector, small taxpayers, they have committed mistakes, ma'am, and they are suffering now. So if there is some one-time amnesty, that would be a great relief to those small taxpayers, ma'am. And again, the litigations are piling up, and due to non-functioning of GST tribunal, taxpayers are forced to move to the High Court for smaller issues. So for quick collection of disputed tax and also to reduce litigation, I suggest to introduce a dispute resolution scheme, ma'am, in line with SVLDRS scheme which was presented in 2019 and which was highly successful, ma'am. And also there should be an automatic stay for demand till the time limit for appeal is over. And lastly, one more suggestion, ma'am. A time-bound window, say for 1 month, may be given for taking input tax credit, which we could not, some taxpayers couldn't take because of Section 16 for limitations. So if this one-time window can be given, that could be really a relaxation for many taxpayers. These measures are going to mitigate the genuine hardships of many taxpayers and boost the confidence of the trade and industry, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
We go to the next speaker, Shri Hari Sharan Sharma, Head of Finance and Commerce, Grasim Industries Limited. So I kindly request you earnestly to please keep your questions brief.
Thank you, madam and sirs. I am representing Grasim Industries, which is the flagship company of Aditya Biswas Group. I have only 3 questions and answer can be very little. It is the general question, not specific to my industry. One question: by the proposed amendment to Section 43BH of the Income Tax Act, the government intends to promote timely payment to micro and small enterprises. Whether this benefit can also be extended to medium-scale enterprises. And second question: whether the government has any plan for new amnesty scheme under CBDT to settle all old demand and dispute. And this amnesty scheme can be for CBD, income tax and GST also. And the last one is, going forward, whether the government has any plan to levy a single tax in India for both direct and indirect tax. After implementation of the GST, already many compliances have been reduced, but if single tax can be implemented, then simplifying of tax and can also be done.
So on this Section 43B, this is something we can examine, but again, we have gone by what is currently covered under the MSME Act. So what is covered there is intended to be covered in the Income Tax Act, but we will take a look. There is no immediate plan. If there was a plan for an amnesty scheme, probably it would have been announced in the budget. And as regard levy of single tax, that is, you are suggesting that there should be no income tax and GST and only a single tax replacing both. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
That has very major implications for progressivity. In this, if there are people who, if there are some people who do not pay income tax and pay only this, and there are some people who pay both, it is a very complicated measure because it would also involve the rights of state governments. So whether a single tax is feasible in Indian conditions as a federation is quite it's a major issue which requires actually a very detailed sort of seminar to discuss. So I would not be able to give you a response here. It would also mean abolishing the taxing rights of all the states and confining them in the central government, reducing the states to basically receivers of devolution only. And there are many other implications. So I'm just giving you one or two of them.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker, Shri Pankaj Jha, Chief Financial Officer, Vedanta Limited.
Good morning, respected madam, and all dignitaries. Good morning to all senior officials on the dais and off the dais, and to all fellow colleagues. So, madam, I am honored to be part of this discussion. I am Pankaj Jha, CFO of Vedanta Limited Jharsuguda unit, which is the world's largest single location aluminium producing facilities ex-China. So first of all, let me take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank you for the best balanced green budget of Amrit Kal. So madam, my question is around RODTEP scheme, which was made available from Jan 2021 by replacing then MEIS license. So madam, RODTEP scheme was introduced to boost export. However, in this scheme, the SEZ seems to have been missed out, which was there in MEIS. Would request your good office to incorporate SEZ in the RODTEP scheme to boost export.
That be a case of a double advantage being given to SEZ. Domestic producer gets for exports a RODTEP. You are already in a special export zone, which has many other facilities created, which is not available in the domestic area. So they are promoting, their export gets promoted through RODTEP. You're already in a promoted area for export. You also want RODTEP. Won't it be doubly advantaging you and bringing in an uneven level, not level playing field for the domestic? The principle itself will have to be thought through.
Sure, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. The next speaker, Shri Shiv Prasad Padi, practicing cost accountant.
The mic should move a bit faster between one person and the other. There should be more mics available, please.
Very good morning, madam. Dignitaries on the dais and off the dais. I'm a practicing cost accountant and I have 2 points, one relating to GST and one relating to income tax. Ma'am, clause 128 of the Finance Bill 2023 proposes removal of restriction imposed on the registered persons engaged in supplying goods through electronic commerce operators, opting to pay tax under the composition scheme for intrastate supply. But ma'am, as per the existing provision of the law, a composite taxpayer is not entitled to make interstate supply of goods. So this proposal, after amendment, it will restrict electronic commerce operators to do any business interstate. So my humble submission and request to you to please consider suitable amendment in the provision so as to make a composite taxpayer eligible for interstate supply of goods as an electronic commerce operator. This is one.
Want a composite taxpayer
to
be able to do interstate supply?
Yeah, because as per the proposal, they will be restricted. Electronic commerce operators.
That's right. He would do it if he registers himself separately in that state, wouldn't he? Composite supplier registered in Odisha. If he is registered in Jharkhand, he can do his business. But being registered as a composite player in one state defeats the principle if we start spreading everywhere else without registering in the respective state domain.
Yes, ma'am, but paying IGST would equally solve the purpose. Multiple registration probably can be avoided for an electronic commerce operator if he is allowed to make industry supply.
I think it's working, but let's have a look.
Ma'am, my second submission is regarding reimbursement of medical expenses through approved hospitals only. State like Odisha, ma'am, we don't have much approved hospitals. So maybe the middle income class group, whenever they incur any expenditure relating to IPD and OPD, may please be considered as deduction, even if not from approved hospitals, because in state like Odisha, we don't have many approved hospitals. So this is one submission, ma'am. Exemption may be granted for medical expenses to at least those middle level income group, even if it is not from approved hospitals, because post-COVID, we know that the expenditure has really gone up for medical expenditure. And ma'am, relating to education expenses also, the GST rate which you are charging for professional learning programs, maybe that can be reduced so that people can think more about the professional learning programs, and that would lead to accessible and affordable education for those taxpayers, ma'am. And ma'am, last question is, ma'am, the provision relating to 43B, which has been proposed as per the IT Act, ma'am, similar provision we have in section 2, clause D, second provision, where ITC is to be reversed if payment is not made to MSMEs for 180 days. So now there are two different principles, one followed by IT Act, the other one followed by Income Tax Act. The provision of as per MSMED is now applicable to for MSMEs payment in IT Act. Maybe similar provision can be brought into GST Act section 16 subsection 2 second provision clause D, so that it will help MSMEs, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Have you met up with the Finance Minister of Odisha with all these GST related demands?
Yes, ma'am.
That's the right forum.
Yes, ma'am. I have made the tweet.
Thank you, ma'am. I call upon the next speaker, Shri Shanta Kumar Rakesh, Administrative Executive, Tata Consultancy Services.
Respected Honorable Finance Minister and other dignitaries of this meeting. Ma'am, my name is Nilay. I am representing Tata Consultancy Services Finance. Ma'am, we have a query related to TDS provision. With effect from 1st April 2023, as you are aware that the new tax regime is going to be the default tax regime for all the taxpayers. Also, there is a provision at the time of filing the income tax return, an SSC can opt for, an SSC can switch over to any tax regime. So unless the opted tax regime to be made known to the employer or director at the beginning of the financial year, it would be very difficult on the part of the employer to follow the correct TDS provision process. So hence, ma'am, we are requesting, we would like to have a necessary guidelines in this regard so that we can adhere the TDS provision process correctly.
Yeah, I think this point is well taken. And when the instructions are issued, see, let us be clear. In terms of what you choose to do for your tax return, that option even today, when the default is the old tax regime, the actual exercising of the option for the new tax regime for the return filing occurs at the time of filing the return. When you open that screen, it will ask you whether you wish to go under section so and so, then you tick that, it will take you to that box. But even today, there is a methodology by which you can intimate your employer. Such a methodology needs to be ensured in the new system. It's a valid point. I am of the impression that it is already under their consideration, but it's a valid suggestion. Please do send it to us in writing, and so that what you are saying is you should be able to intimate your employer that you wish to be on the old. I can't see you where. Yes. So that is what you are asking for, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If you want to remain in the old tax regime, you wish to intimate your employer to do TDS as per the old tax regime, since that is what you are proposing to elect.
Right, sir.
Yes. A facility for that, I think it's a legitimate request. Please send it to us. I'll get it examined.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you very much, ma'am. And thank you very much for giving this opportunity. And this platform is, it's absolutely a great platform to represent TCS, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
We come to the last question of the session by Mr. Manoj Kumar, Director, Visa Steel Limited.
Good morning, madam. and good morning to all the dignitaries at the dais. I represent Visa Group of Industries. We are based out of Kalinganagar. We make steel, pig iron, sponge iron, ferrochrome and coke. I will briefly give my question. The question is that the company is procuring coal on payment of GST compensation cess at the rate of 400 rupees per ton, besides 5% GST, and utilizes the same for manufacturing of finished goods. These finished goods, while are directly exported to the foreign countries at zero GST, the company is eligible for refund of GST compensation cess, which is being timely granted by the government. However, when the company is exporting the finished goods through intermediaries such as merchant export at a concessional rate of 0.1% GST, the refund of GST compensation cess is denied, which is not only affecting the export competitiveness, but also leading to blockage of working capital of the company. Whereas in both the cases, the goods are physically going outside the custom frontiers of India. So this is what we request, humbly request, that if some instruction or some modification is given to the concerned department, this benefit can be passed on to us.
I'm sure the Finance Secretary will add some things, but I'd want this request to be passed through the state government Odisha.
Okay.
All right?
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And also, please send this request to the to us also, to the central government. Right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. We come to the end of the question-answer session.
Just 1 minute. There's some... Yes, this gentleman has been raising his hand for a very long time.
Sir, please kindly introduce yourself and...
I'm a farmer bureaucrat, and we welcome India's flamboyant finance minister to our midst today here. So my question is, right from Manmohan Singh's liberation policy to Madam Sitharaman's conceiving of a 5 trillion economy, it's a long journey. But sir, I'll just draw your kind attention to the World Bank observation that 22% of world's poor are now living in India. What is the specific plan of Government of India to raise the standard of living of those 22% of poor? Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
22% of the world's poor are in India. What are the plans of Government of India to improve the condition of the poor?
Question, it is more for the ministry to take a call on it. It's not for me to say anything about how they want to. I appreciate that you have 22% of your coal, and as a result nowadays a lot more of royalties are reaching. Poor. I heard it as coal.
Poor.
What is the government doing for the poor? And is it 22%? He said World Bank says 22% of the world's poor live in India.
It's a poverty issue.
No, I'm able to understand, but I'm actually lost for words when you say, what have you done for poor? Actual real poverty between 14 to 22, the same World Bank and IMF has also said has come down in India. And it also goes to the extent of saying that between, I'm not talking politics, but it is dates which also are being mentioned by the World Bank. The real poverty reduction between 2004-5 to 14 and between 14 and 22 have substantially come down. And during the COVID, because of the free food grain distribution, those who were in the risk of falling further down at the poverty level have also been held back from falling into that, below poverty, high-risk levels. So they have been. In fact, if you look at the various programs of the government, whether it is giving housing, PM Awas Yojana goes to the poor, whether it is in the rural area or urban. Free food I've already talked about. Giving electricity, giving free gas connection at the first point, and also making sure that 200 rupees, because of the additional price rise, 200 rupees per cylinder is given to the poor, per cylinder, and without any restriction. It goes for the poor who pick the Ujjwala, under the Ujjwala scheme, who get the connection, are also being given subsidy. For building toilets in the poor people's homes, government gives money so that they can build it, and Manrega workers are also building it, which means the labor component is also taken care of. Then, besides all this, the PM Jan Dhan Yojana actually brought them financial inclusion. Now, nearly at the time when this was brought in, whatever level of people who had their accounts, it was all zero balance. But because we brought in the direct benefit transfer scheme, so that every money which has to go, let us say, to an old pensioner or a widow or any other facility which goes to them, goes directly into their accounts, those zero balance accounts today hold a balance of 2 lakh or over, 2 lakh crores or over in those PM Jan Dhan accounts which have been opened. And as a result, today, they get mudra loans if they're doing small business in the street corners without collateral. They also get Swanidhi, which is again a credit program which goes to them. And during the COVID, you saw that the government sent through direct benefit transfer some money in their hands. For medical expenses, they've all been included in the Ayushman Bharat scheme, wherein the family gets the card for Ayushman Bharat, and up to 5 lakh rupees they can have free treatment in any of the empaneled hospitals. Over and above this, the Jan Aushadhi Kendras which have been opened provide medicines at the generic medicines, which are equivalent to the branded prescribed medicines which are given through the doctors. For a household, it has been worked out. Average, if they were spending really 2,000 rupees for medicines, now they are getting that very set of medicines at 200 rupees only. These are examples that I want to put before you to say the government's programs are all tailored towards the poor, so that they just don't get money for their hands through the Manrega or Awas Yojana programs, where they can go and work and get the wages for 100 days. But more than that, the actual reaching out of what they desperately need, a simple house with electricity, with a toilet, with cooking gas, and making sure they also have some money in the bank accounts through the Jan Dhan Yojana. The health I've already expanded on. Other than this, they are also given now the facility to be able to reach out and see if they can have some basic skilling given to them so that they can be ready for jobs. So the approach to dealing with the poor under Prime Minister Modi is more to empower them with all these basic requirements given to them, after which they will be in a position to make a choice as to what they want to do with themselves or their children. Now, this is actually empowering them rather than just saying, give cash in their hand, which is a sense of, with a sense of entitlement. So, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is actually getting executed line by line by line. Housing, electricity, cooking gas, and deposits, and also collateral-free loans through banks to do their small businesses, and so on. You have anything more to add?
I just wanted to add a few things. Some may be repeat, but I'm trying to avoid any repetition. A huge amount of money is spent on providing remunerative prices to farmers, on ensuring that fertilizer prices in India, which are obtained by small farmers, have remained unchanged despite a doubling of global prices. The PM Kisan scheme provides 6,000 rupees per farmer to about 10 crore farmers. Rail fares, second-class rail fares and suburban rail fares, mainly again used by the lower income strata of society, have remained unchanged despite global fuel prices, electricity prices, gas prices all going up over the last 8 years. Large number of people are being assisted for livelihoods under the National Rural Livelihood Mission and the National Urban Livelihood Mission. many crores of people are getting almost negligible cost insurance under the Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana and the Suraksha Bima Yojana. We provide interest subvention to small farmers for their agricultural credit loans, and there is also a special Stand Up India scheme for providing loans to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, and there are a large number of scholarships which are provided to the weaker sections of society. There are many more. I do not have the entire list with me, so I think that's an illustrative list. Yes. And
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. With that, we come to the closure of this session. I would like to thank the Honorable Union Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, for being with us today and setting the tone of the meeting and clarifying the questions of the trade. We are immensely grateful, ma'am, for having selected the city of Bhubaneswar for this post-budget interaction. I would also like to thank the Honorable Ministers of State for Finance, Shri Pankaj Chaudhary and Dr. Bhagwat Kishan Rao Karad, and the panel of secretaries from Finance Ministry for taking part in this interaction. I would like to thank the members of trade and industry who have participated in this exercise. I thank one and all for making this program a success. Thank you. I now request all to